I didn't expect my life to change because of a single crumpled dollar bill. The restaurant was buzzing with noise, clinking silverware, conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter. But I wasn't laughing. I was exhausted. My shift had started at 5 a.m., and my legs ached from running between tables. I was used to rude customers, condescending glances, and people treating me like I was invisible. But nothing prepared me for him. He sat in the VIP booth, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit, sipping whiskey like he owned the world. And maybe he did. Damian Cole, a billionaire, a man whose name alone sent business tycoons trembling. I had served his table perfectly. No mistakes, no delays, nothing short of flawless service. But when I went to pick up the bill, my breath caught in my throat. A $1 tip. One. Miserable. Dollar. I felt my stomach tighten. I had seen terrible tips before, but from a billionaire? It wasn't just insulting, it was humiliating. Damian didn't even look at me as he stood up. Instead, he adjusted his gold cufflinks, his expression unreadable. And then, before walking away, he muttered with the coldest indifference, "That's all you're worth?" I gripped the dollar so tightly that my knuckles turned white. That moment changed everything. I should have let it go. I should have just rolled my eyes and moved on like I did with every other disrespectful customer. But I couldn't. Not this time. I was tired of being looked down upon. Tired of struggling. Tired of people like him thinking they could walk over me without consequence. I clenched my fists, the paper crinkling in my grasp. My breath was heavy. My heart pounded. And then an idea sparked. A dangerous, reckless idea. If that's all I was worth to him, I'd prove him wrong. I didn't know how, but I would. And when I did, I would make sure Damian Cole regretted ever underestimating me. Quitting my job wasn't an option. Not yet. I had no savings, no backup plan, and no support system. But I had something more dangerous than money. A purpose. I started researching Damian Cole that same night. I barely slept. I read every article, every interview, every business deal he had ever made. The man was a shark, a ruthless investor, a master at destroying businesses and buying them for pennies. I needed an opportunity, and then I found it. One of his newest acquisitions, a failing restaurant chain. I grinned. The irony was almost poetic. A week later, I did something that would have terrified the old me. I walked into the headquarters of Cole Enterprises. I didn't belong there. The polished marble floors, the scent of wealth and power, the suited executives gliding through the hallways like they were born to rule. I was an outsider. But I didn't care, because I wasn't the same girl who had been humiliated in that restaurant. I walked up to the receptionist, smiled, and said with absolute confidence, "I have a business proposal for Damian Cole." She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I admitted, still smiling. "But he'll want to hear what I have to say." I didn't know if I was lying or not, but I had come too far to turn back now. I waited for what felt like hours before I was finally led to a massive office with floor-to-ceiling windows. And there he was, Damian Cole. His piercing gray eyes studied me with the same disinterest as before, like I was nothing more than a waste of his time. But this time, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. "You have 5 minutes," he said flatly, leaning back in his chair. I smiled. "Actually, Mr. Cole, you have 5 minutes to hear why I'm about to become your biggest competitor." For the first time, his expression changed. Just a flicker. But it was enough. I had his attention. Damian didn't laugh. He didn't scoff or dismiss me outright. He just stared. And then, he leaned forward, placing his elbows on his desk. "Go on," he said, his voice low. So I did. I told him I knew about his failing restaurant investment. I told him I had a plan to turn it around, one that didn't involve cutting corners or screwing over employees. His gaze sharpened. "And why would I give you control?" he asked, his voice cold. I smirked. "Because if you don't, I'll buy the business myself and do it without you." A pause. And then, he laughed. Not a chuckle, not an amused scoff. A full, rich, dangerous laugh. "You?" He leaned back, shaking his head. "You're nothing but a waitress." I met his gaze without blinking. Not anymore. I didn't expect him to agree. I expected him to kick me out, to tell security to throw me onto the sidewalk like trash. But instead, he watched me, silently, calculating. And then he said something I wasn't prepared for. Fine. Prove it. My breath hitched. What? You think you can fix it? Then fix it. I'll give you 30 days. If you fail, you walk away forever. If you succeed, his smirk deepened. Then we'll talk. My pulse raced. This was insanity. A suicidal gamble. But I wasn't backing down. I smiled. Deal? Walking out of his office. My hands were shaking. 30 days. To prove myself. To turn around a dying business. To prove to Damian Cole that I was worth more than a damn dollar bill. Failure wasn't an option. Because if I lost, I wouldn't just lose a business. I would lose my only chance at revenge. And that wasn't going to happen. 30 days. That was all I had to prove myself. As I stepped out of Cole Enterprises, I exhaled sharply, my heart pounding in my ears. I had done it. I had pushed Damian Cole into giving me a chance. But now came the hard part. I wasn't some business tycoon. I didn't have investors, experience, or a network of powerful people backing me. But what I did have, a grudge, a fire burning in my veins, a relentless refusal to lose. I spent the entire night researching, breaking down every failure of the restaurant Damian had acquired. The menu was uninspired. The location was barely surviving. The service was abysmal. If I was going to win, I needed an edge. And I found one. I couldn't do this alone. The next morning, I made my first move. I returned to the restaurant, observing the staff. They were miserable, underpaid, overworked, treated like dirt by upper management. I recognized that exhaustion in their eyes. I had lived it, so I offered them something different. Give me a month, I told them. 1 month to prove that we can turn this place around. I can't promise miracles, but I promise I'll fight for you harder than anyone ever has. A few waiters scoffed, skeptical, but some listened. One by one, I rallied them. I wasn't just fighting for my pride. I was fighting for them too. Damian wasn't impressed. I caught him watching me the following week, arms crossed, cold gray eyes analyzing my every move. Still playing Waitress, he mocked. I didn't take the bait. I simply smiled. Still underestimating me? For a brief second, I saw something flash in his expression. Something unreadable. He didn't say another word. But as he walked away, I knew he was waiting for me to fail. And I refused to give him that satisfaction. Things weren't easy. Damian's upper management hated me. They saw me as nothing but a waitress with a big mouth. They wanted me gone, so they sabotaged me. Orders went missing. Supplies were delayed. The chef threatened to quit. It was a war, but I didn't crumble. I fought harder. I stayed up until 3 a.m. rewriting the menu. I convinced the chef to trust me. I pulled the staff together and worked double shifts to cover gaps. And then, the customers started coming back. Reviews began improving. People noticed. And so did Damian. 2 weeks in, he invited me back to his office. I expected arrogance, mockery, but instead, he looked curious. Impressive, he admitted. But it won't last. I leaned forward. Want to bet? A slow, dangerous smirk spread across his lips. Careful, sweetheart. I don't lose. I smirked right back. Neither do I. Damian wasn't going to let me win easily. By week 3, things got worse. One night, an anonymous complaint shut the restaurant down for health violations. It was a setup. I stormed into Cole Enterprises the next morning, furious. Damian was waiting, calm as ever. Did you do this? I demanded. He sipped his whiskey. Business is war. I slammed my hands on his desk. Then you just declared war on the wrong person. For the first time I saw it. A flicker of something darker in his eyes. Intrigue. Amusement. Maybe even respect. And I knew then, this wasn't just business anymore. This was personal. They wanted to shut me down? Fine. I fought back. I exposed the fake complaints. I brought the media in to show the unfair shutdown. Customers rallied behind me. And Damian? He watched it all. But this time, he didn't look like a man waiting for me to fail. He looked like a man who had finally found a worthy opponent. Day 29. I had done it. Sales were up. Reviews were raving. The restaurant was thriving. I had won. And Damian? He called me to his office one last time. You surprised me, he admitted. I smiled. I tend to do that. His gaze darkened. I want you to work for me, he said. Forget the restaurant. I have bigger plans for you. My heart pounded. I could take the offer. Be rich. Secure. Never struggle again. Or I could prove, once and for all, that I was more than just some girl he once left $1 for. I met his gaze, and I made my choice. I should have walked out of his office that night and never looked back. But I didn't. I stayed, not because I wanted to accept his offer, but because I wanted to know why he made it. You expect me to just drop everything? I asked, arms crossed. Damien leaned back in his leather chair, watching me with unsettling amusement. I expect you to be smart enough to know when to take an opportunity, he said smoothly. You've proven yourself. Now, I'm offering you something bigger. My jaw tightened. You think I worked this hard just to become another one of your employees? He smirked. Not an employee, he corrected. A partner. I froze. That wasn't what I expected. Damien Cole, the ruthless billionaire who once left me a $1 tip, was now offering me a seat at his table? It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. Because this felt like a trap. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched him, studied him. Why me? I finally asked. He swirled the whiskey in his glass, eyes sharp as steel. Because you're different, he admitted. Most people break. You didn't. His gaze darkened. You fought back. I knew there was more he wasn't saying. Damien Cole didn't just respect power. He was drawn to it. He wanted to see how far I would go, how much I could take, how much of myself I was willing to lose. I leaned forward, mirroring his intensity. And if I say no? Something flickered in his expression. Then you become my competition. The way he said it, so calm, so dangerously amused, sent a chill down my spine. Because I knew then, Damien Cole never lost. And if I refused him, he would do everything in his power to destroy me. I didn't sleep that night. Damien had put the decision in my hands, but in reality, this was war. If I joined him, I'd be playing in his world. A world of power, corruption, and control. But if I walked away, he would crush me. The thought made my blood run cold. I had built everything from the ground up. I wasn't about to let him take it from me. So, the next morning, I made my decision. I wasn't going to accept his offer, but I wasn't going to run either. Instead, I was going to fight back. I started by doing something bold, reckless, maybe even suicidal. I bought out one of Damien's failing businesses, a small hotel chain he had planned to liquidate and gut for profit. Instead, I saved it, rebranded it, turned it into something he hadn't even considered. And just like that, I became his direct competitor. His reaction? Deadly silence. Then, 2 days later, he struck back. He didn't attack me directly. That wasn't his style. Instead, he started buying out my suppliers. Overnight, my restaurants were cut off. No shipments, no ingredients, no resources. I was bleeding money, but if he thought that was enough to break me, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I countered. I found new suppliers, international ones. I formed alliances with companies Damien had burned in the past, ones who would rather take a gamble on me than crawl back to him. And it worked. The momentum shifted. I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. Damien wasn't just angry. He was intrigued. One night, after weeks of warfare, I found him waiting for me outside my restaurant, leaning against his car, watching me with those sharp, unreadable eyes. You're enjoying this, I accused. A smirk. Immensely. I should have hated him, but in that moment, I saw something else in his gaze. Not just competition. Obsession. The battle escalated. Damien moved to buy out my entire company. I blocked the sale. He tried to buy out my investors. I found new ones. And then, he made a mistake. He underestimated just how far I was willing to go. I dug deeper into his empire, found his weaknesses, exposed a shady business deal that forced him to pull back on expansions. For the first time, Damien Cole lost. And I saw it. The flicker of something dangerous in his expression. Respect. Desire. A challenge. You set out to destroy me, I told him, breathless. His smirk was slow. Dangerous. I set out to see if you were worth the fight. The war should have ended. But instead, he made a new offer. Not business. Not partnership. Something far more personal. You want power? Damien whispered, stepping closer. Then take it. With me. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because I wasn't just fighting Damien anymore. I was becoming him. For the first time, I hesitated, not because I feared him, but because I feared what I was becoming. If I accepted his offer, I wouldn't just win, I'd change. And I didn't know if I could ever go back. Damien pushed me one last time to prove that I had what it took to stay in his world. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need him. I never did. The next day, I walked away, not from the fight, but from him. I had won, and he knew it, because for the first time, he had no move left to make. Months later, I sat in my office, overlooking my own empire, bigger than his, stronger, built without him. And when Damien finally called, I let the phone ring, because I had already won, and he knew it. The billionaire who once gave me a $1 tip, now he was the one chasing me.